How many more assassination attempts on Donald Trump until the president and the vice president and you pick a different word to describe Trump other than threat?
The question that you're asking, it is also incredibly dangerous.
Karine Jean-Pierre had her first press briefing after the second assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life. And as you can well imagine, the vast majority of the reporters were basically asking her questions similar to this. Karine Jean-Pierre, does the president agree that Donald Trump is basically responsible for all of these assassination attempts on his life? Does the president agree that Donald Trump's been asking for it? I mean, it was only a matter of time, right? Does the president agree with that? That's pretty much what all the reporters asked, except for one, except for Peter Doocy, who actually sort of recognized the elephant in the room. And by the way, the elephant in the room was wearing orange and has very curly hair. Take a look.
It's been only 2 days since somebody allegedly tried to kill Donald Trump again. And you're here at the podium in the White House briefing room calling him a threat. How many more assassination attempts on Donald Trump until the president and the vice president and you pick a different word to describe Trump other than threat?
Now, that's actually a great question, although Karine Jean-Pierre, who is never used to actually dealing with great questions that challenge her, she took issue with it, and you'll see that in a moment. But understand exactly the point Peter Doocy is making here, just 2 days after another attempt on Donald Trump's life, and they keep using this word over and over again. In fact, the very first day Joe Biden made a public appearance in Iowa, summer of 2019, when he decided to run for president, when interest rates are low, gas prices were low, unemployment was low, we were living in heydays, we were making peace deals between Arab countries and Israel. Everything was great. So Joe Biden needed a talking point for his presidential campaign in June of 2019. This is pre-COVID, pre-Chinese releasing or accidentally letting a virus slip out of the Wuhan lab, all that stuff, right? So what does Joe Biden do? Well, he called Donald Trump an existential threat to this nation. This is the kind of divisive, violent rhetoric that we've been hearing from Joe Biden and his White House since even before they took possession of the White House, or occupancy of the White House, to be more accurate. They beat this drum all the time. Donald Trump isn't wrong. His policies aren't wrong. We don't have to defeat him on election day. He is a threat. If he wins, we won't have another election in this country. He will be a dictator. He is an existential threat that doesn't have to be defeated at the ballot box. He has to be stopped. He has to be eliminated. This is the language they use. And here she is over and over again calling him a threat. And so Peter Doocy says, seriously, does it take 10 assassination attempts before maybe you change your language? Because people are taking you seriously and they're trying to stop that threat. There is obviously nothing wrong with that question. In fact, it's the only question that should have been asked yesterday. So now let's see how Karine Jean-Pierre reacted.
Peter, if anything from this administration, I actually completely disagree with the premise of your question, the question that you're asking. It is also incredibly dangerous in the way that you're asking it, because American people are watching. And to say that from an administration who has consistently condemned political violence, from an administration where the president called the former president and was thankful, grateful that he was okay, from an administration who has called out January 6th, called out the attack of Paul Pelosi, called out and said we need to lower the temperature after the Butler incident. And now for you to make that kind of comment in your question, because your question involved a comment and a statement. And, it is, that is also incredibly dangerous when we have been very clear in condemning political violence from here. What I have said about the president, the former president, about January 6th is facts that you all have reported. It is fact. When you have a former president who basically says that the election wasn't the results of the election were not the results of the election. When dozens of more than 60 Republican judges said that it was a free and fair election. More than 60 said it was indeed a free and fair election. You had more than 2,000 people who were told to go to the Capitol. It was one of the darkest days of our democracy, one of the darkest days. There were law enforcement officers who died because of what happened at the Capitol. And they were there because the former president told them to go there. I mean, I don't know if that's not a threat in our democracy when it was one of the darkest days of our democracy, January 6th, one of the darkest days. And so we have been very clear from here. Now, we can have a disagreement on policies. We can on issues. That is what we should do. It is important to have those disagreements. It is welcome to have those disagreements on the economy, on healthcare, on foreign policy. But when you start bringing political rhetoric, that is not okay. And
Okay, but what is calling President Trump a threat but political rhetoric? That's exactly what it is. That's political rhetoric. One person's threat could be another person's saving hope for our Constitution, right? I mean, clearly, it's not objective fact that Donald Trump is a threat to our nation, because I doubt half of this country's voters at this moment in time would be voting for someone to be a threat to our country, would they? That's obviously, logically speaking, Karine Jean-Pierre, and I know this may hurt your curly head there to actually hear this. I'm sorry, I just can't get over the hair. It's just so distracting. I know this might hurt your head to think about it, but it is obvious logic. People don't vote for someone thinking that they are a threat to their own country. So this is a disagreement. It's a matter of opinion. But how you go about articulating that opinion is very important. That's the whole point of political rhetoric. And by consistently beating this drum, look at this answer. That took her 3 minutes to spend most of her time talking about January 6th. And then eventually she says, now we could have policy disagreements. Well, then why did you spend 2.5 minutes talking about January 6th before you finally got to a supposed policy disagreement? Although honestly, at this point, because Kamala Harris changes her policies to match Donald Trump's, I'm not sure what policy disagreements there are. They can't stand on their policies. They can't stand there anymore and tell you that Bidenomics is working and we have the strongest economy on the planet, because even their candidate isn't saying that. So if they have nothing to say proactively and positively about why you should vote for them, the only thing left for a politician is to demonize the other guy. And that's exactly what they're doing. And they're doing it with language that is inspiring lunatics to take them at their word. She stands up there and she says, this administration constantly condemns political violence. There's no room for political violence in our society. That being said, Donald Trump is a threat to our nation. He must be stopped at all costs. But let's just be clear here. I condemn political violence. We don't want any violence. But that man right there, he's a threat, and he has to be stopped. I mean, this is Julius Caesar, Brutus's speech level of hypocrisy. I just named the wrong character. It wasn't Brutus. Mark Antony, thank you. Let me do that again. This is Mark Antony level hypocrisy from Julius Caesar, standing up there and saying, oh, Brutus is an honorable man. Brutus is an honorable man. While sticking the proverbial knife in Brutus's back and riling up the crowd to go scalp Brutus and drag him through the streets of Rome. That's what she's doing here. We condemn political violence. We don't want any violence. Violence is bad. Violence is horrible. Oh, by the way, Donald Trump is a threat and he has to be stopped. This is all they have. They can't talk about their own policies, so they've got to demonize Donald Trump. And I mentioned it, so let's take a look at it. Here it was, June of 2019, Ottumwa, Iowa. He had just announced his candidacy for president. And again, we had a booming economy. Gas prices are a little over $2 a gallon. Interest rates for homes were like 4.5%. Credit card interest rates were like 15%. We had record low unemployment for African Americans and Latinos and women in this country. Wall Street was exploding. We were making peace deals between Arab nations and Israel. I mean, they had nothing to run on other than demonize Donald Trump, turn him into a monster. And so here was Joe Biden telling the good people of Iowa why they should vote for him.
You know, and I think that, look, I believe that the president is literally an existential threat. This is really dangerous stuff, and it's not easy. He's a threat, in my view, a threat to our core values. And folks, the fact of the matter is that 4 years of Donald Trump will be viewed as an aberration in American history. 8 years will fundamentally change who we are as a nation and how we're viewed around the world.
This is what he has been doing literally from the beginning of his campaign. In fact, the only thing that preceded this appearance in Iowa in 2019 was the video that he put out saying that the reason he was running was because of Charlottesville, because Donald Trump called white nationalists and neo-Nazis very fine people, which of course he never did. Not only has the Joe Biden campaign and now his presidency been based on a pack of lies, but all of those lies have been meant to demonize and dehumanize Donald Trump and turn the American people against him, especially deranged, potentially violent individuals. So spare me the crocodile tears and the righteous indignation. And the Karine Jean-Pierre saying, I cannot believe you would say such that. That is dangerous. That question you asked me is dangerous. Even asking me such a thing is dangerous. You're putting me in danger. You're putting all of us in danger. Your words are violence, Peter Doocy. No, you know what violence is? Violence is violence. Violence is violence. And we're seeing violence. We're seeing violence inspired by your rhetoric right now. So let's see how she finishes up here. This lover of the First Amendment, lover of a free press, lover of freedom of speech. Let's see how she finishes up here with Peter Doocy, you know, a reporter just doing his job.
That's what you've heard from us, too. You've heard of differences on policies.
But to your point, there are people watching at home who might miss the part where you say, let's lower the temperature. And there are mentally unstable people who are attempting to kill political candidates, attempting to kill Donald Trump. And they are still hearing this White House refer to him as a threat. Is there no concern that people are taking that literally?
We're using examples. We're not just saying that just to—
Oh, well, I mean, hey, that makes it okay. Sure. We're calling him. Do you notice how she doesn't object to the premise of this question? I mean, good for Doocy, as always. Imagine being the only man in the room like he is. Imagine being the only guy in the room surrounded by people, and you're the only one brave enough to stand up and challenge this person. But he is, and God bless him for his courage. But his question was great. There are deranged people out there who will hear you use this language, and they will want to take it upon themselves to neutralize that threat that you have identified. And we've already seen 2 people try to do it. And instead of reject that and say, well, you're wrong about that. No, instead she says, well, we are giving examples. In other words, you're right. You're right. Deranged people could take our rhetoric here and turn it into action. But at least we're backing up our language with examples that will even further motivate those maniacs. We're giving examples? That's the best she's got? At least we're explaining why he's a threat. At least we're showing you why he has to be eliminated. So come on, give us some credit here.
To say it. January 6th, Peter. January 6th. Wait, January 6th. How many times do we have to? January 6th, 2021. That is a fact. What
I'm sorry. I know some people get frustrated when I interrupt, but I just got to chat. You realize that the only thing she is capable of talking about right now about how giving voters are a reason to vote for Kamala Harris instead of Donald Trump is something that occurred before their presidency even began. January 6th, January 6th, January 6th. She literally repeated it like 4 or 5 times just now. That's the basis of their entire reelection campaign. Because this is a reelection campaign. This is 4 more years of Biden-Harris is what it is. It's just that Biden has been shoved aside. Why do you need 4 more years? Because of something that happened 2 weeks before we took office. This is how backed against the wall they are right now. This is how little they have to run on. This is why it's a fair observation to make that it's almost like they're utilizing very loose and dangerous political rhetoric to equalize this campaign, which is quite realistically beginning to not be very even at all, because this is all they've got. It's okay to say that Donald Trump, a man who has faced 2 assassination attempts in 2 months, it's okay to say that he's a threat and to use this rhetoric because of January 6th. These are the rules that we're living under now. These are her rules. These are their rules.
was reported that happened on that day by some of your colleagues. I mean, and we have at the same time denounced political violence over and over, political rhetoric over and over again, over and over again. But I know your focus has to be on this side of the house. It can't be on your side of the house. I get that. I get that. But we also have to be careful on how you're asking me these questions. People are watching, and is what you are saying about us raising political violent rhetoric, whatever, however you just formulated it, this is an administration that has denounced and condemned any type of political rhetoric or violence. It is the reason why this president decided to run in 2020. That is why the president decided to come back. He believed that it is important to save the soul of America, of our nation. And he believed it was important that we continue to fight for our democracy, fight for our freedom. That's what you see from this administration. I'm moving on. Go ahead.
Yeah, she's moving on. You know what? We're moving on as well. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Karine. Bye-bye. We're moving on too. We got to move on, because I don't want us to be angry during this entire program. There's too much to be happy about right now in this country. And by the way, even that you should be happy about, because let me tell you something. If this is all they've got at this point, 50 days out from the election, we went through the chart yesterday, watched the video, where Donald Trump is in a better position right now in mid-September toward Election Day than he was 4 years ago against Joe Biden and 8 years ago against Hillary Clinton. He is running way ahead of where he was in either of those presidential elections. The worm is turning right now. Kamala Harris got nothing out of that debate, because I told you the day after that debate that she didn't win the debate. Donald Trump actually did better in that debate on the issues and on the substance of the issues. They've got nothing right now. They are scrambling right now in the fact that she and her colleagues continue to use outrageous, divisive, threatening political rhetoric about Donald Trump, will not back down for it, and is running on basically January 6th, January 6th, January 6th. He's a dictator. This is good. This is positive, and this is hopeful, because if that's all they've got 50 days out, they are screwed.